how Jerusalem welcomes us.
Tribune Mozell has promised there'll be no trouble.
I've spoken to prominent citizens. Your safety is their highest priority.
What is that?
Stay here.
Why?
Please. Caesar. Caesar, wait for me.
Good. It will get better.
I couldn't see anything.
In the circus, be aware of the driver's tricks. Two riders part, suck you in between them, and crush you under their wheels. It's called the gate.
I just need to get to my son.
Well, you think they're just going to give it to you? No. The circus is a blood sport, but it is sport. There is strategy, and you have to know it. Good? Messiah rides like a devil. He will do whatever he must to win. Now, when you cut first, they'll tend to put you up on one wheel, so you have to learn how to tilt. It's all about balance, Giorah. I mean, it's a dangerous maneuver, of course, but with courage and practice, it can be mastered. This is the spina. This is where I'll be, and I will try to guide you. Now, when the race begins, do not try to take the lead. Lay back, let the other drivers fight for position. And the best strategy
People of Jerusalem, friends of Rome, we celebrate the power of man.
Good advice.
You will see them race for glory. You will see them fight for honor. You will see them die for you.
Should have stayed away.
You should have killed me.
I will.
there is a way. In the arena, there is no law. Defeat your brother.
Tighten up your reins, Judah!
Come on, Judah.
Kill him! Messiah, kill him!
When they wanted meat and remember the things of Egypt, they started complaining.
All right, that was bad, but that wasn't the occasion. It wasn't the one that Jehovah said that the straw that broke the camel's back. Yes, my brother, go right ahead. The waters of Meribah. Now, remember now. Remember what happened. Jehovah brought them out of Egypt with a strong hand and a mighty way. He fought any battle for them. He would guide them by day. He would guide them by night. In fact, their clothing didn't even wear out. Now imagine you having a pair of shoes and they never wear out. Well, that's what happened. But now something happened at this particular time. They wanted water, something as simple as water. Now that's awful strong to get upset over water. Something as simple as water. Jehovah said, now that's it. You've gone too far. Turn to Exodus chapter 17. In the history of their forefathers, yes, any imperfect people, there's a lot that they will do that's wrong. But Jehovah took note of this. He inspired the Apostle Paul to refer to this particular occasion. In Exodus chapter 17, look at verse 7. So he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah because of the quarreling of the sons of Israel, and because of their putting Jehovah to the test, saying, is Jehovah in our midst or not? Now look at that question. There's the same God that brought them out of Egypt. He humiliated all of the gods of the Egyptians with his plagues. And now they raise the question, they take it to the highest level, they said, is Jehovah in our midst? Now is that lack of faith? They're wondering, is Jehovah even with us? Look at some of the verses that preceded it. Look at verse 3. And the people went on thirsting there for water. And the people kept murmuring against Moses and saying, why is it that you have brought us up out of Egypt to put us and our sons and our livestock to death by thirst? Now that's awful strong over water. Now keep in mind, do you think that the nation of Israel forgot that Jehovah was a true God? Do you think they forgot that here at this time? No, they hadn't forgotten. Do you think that they forgot how he humiliated all the gods of the Egyptians and brought them out in a strong way? Do you think they forgot that? They hadn't forgotten that. Do you think that they forgot when they crossed through that Red Sea, water standing up on both sides like a dam? Some of the archaeologists say that some parts of the Red Sea was as deep as the Empire State Building is high. We don't know if that's exactly where they crossed, but that's the depth of the Red Sea. Do you think you would forget if you were in that dry bed and you're running on water on both sides? Do you think you would forget as you're running through them? No, they didn't forget. They knew Jehovah was a true God. They knew he was all-powerful, almighty. They knew he was a protector, a God who could become whatever they wanted. You know what their problem is now? They wanted water. They didn't have water. They were thirsty. They were tired. They were hot. They were bothered. And now you know what they're telling Jehovah? But what have you done for us lately? We want water and we don't have it. And they raised the question over water. You know, we do the same thing today. Oh, we know Jehovah's a true God. We know he's all powerful. But you know, a person that say, look, I want to get married, and I don't see any brothers falling out of the sky. What have you done for me lately? Oh, they know Jehovah's a true God. They know all that he's done for them. But they're saying, I want this, I don't have it, and are you in my midst right now? Paul said, you better be careful. He said, that's the sin. You don't realize you can get into something that you can't get out of. And it's because you don't believe God. You don't trust him. There's a want of confidence in God right now. And you could say, yeah, but what have you done for me lately? One sister wrote in and said, I'm just going to get me one. No, she said, I'm just going to get me one. She probably could raise her hand and say, lack of faith. But the impact and the meaning is lost. What does that mean? One brother said, look, I got all these bills and nobody's paying my bills. I got all these bills. He said, I can't play the lottery. I'll probably win and be like one brother and get caught. He said, so you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to work 2 jobs. I mean, you know, we got meetings and all of that. He said, but I'm going to work 2 jobs. Nobody's paying their bills. Have you noticed nobody's paying your bills? It's so astonishing when someone pays your bill, we have to put it in the magazine. Tell them, yeah, they got home and groceries was there and all the bills were paid because no one's paying your bills. So a brother sit there and say, who's paying my bills? What have you done for me lately? So I'm going to get 2 jobs. I'm not going to reach out. I'm going to get into a scheme or a deal because I got to make money. So you don't trust God? You don't really believe God and what he said. There's a want of confidence in Jehovah. Paul said that's the straw that broke the camel's back. It was water. Just that simple, water. They probably wouldn't believe we got to buy water nowadays. Over water. Look at verse 17. Hebrews chapter 3 and verse 17. Let's turn back to that letter that the Apostle Paul wrote to brothers and sisters there. Hebrews chapter 3. And look at verse 17. Just in case someone did not get the point of what the Apostle Paul was really saying, what he was bringing to the brothers' attention. In Hebrews chapter 3 and verse 17, Paul said, moreover, with whom did God become disgusted for 40 years? Was it not with those who sinned, whose carcasses fell in the wilderness? Well, now, this is clear what the apostle is saying. He said that Jehovah God, he became so disgusted, they had to wander in the wilderness for 40 years. He said, you will not go into the promised land because of your lack of faith. Now, Paul is pointing it out. He says, well, now, who was it? Look at verse 19. He makes the point. He said, so we see that they could not enter in because of lack of faith. You see, you lack faith, you sin. Paul in verse 17 said, was it not those who sinned? What was the sin at that time? It was a lack of faith. What is the sin today that we want to be aware of? It's a lack of faith. Paul says it should be clear. This is what we're talking about. It's a lack of trust, a lack of confidence in God. It's a disbelief in Jehovah and what he's telling us. Well, here's a question. Did the Apostle Paul wake up that first Christian congregation in world history? Was he successful when writing this letter? Did they wake up? Well, yes, they did. His letter was successful. It was inspired by God, and all of those that love God, they responded to the wake-up call. Now, how do we know? Well, remember, he wrote the letter in 61 CE. We said earlier, that's significant. He wrote the letter in 61 CE. Do you remember something happened about 5 years later in 66 CE? A man named Cestus Gallus marched up to Jerusalem. He encircled the entire city. Now, for some reason, he removed his armies. However, in a prophecy that had implications for our day, Jesus had already told his followers, when you see that happen, when you see somebody come up here and circle Jerusalem, Jesus said the first opportunity you get, you jump down off your house, you run to the mountains. Don't run back in and get the keys to the Lexus, run to the mountains. I'm just, hey, Brother Real, I'm riding with you. So no, we can't go get the keys. We got to run to the mountains. He said, don't go in your house and try to get anything. Just jump down and make your flight. Well, all of the Christians that remember this counsel that had been given years ago, when they read the Apostle Paul's letter in 61, they woke up. They were alert. They said, we better be careful. They said, we better be on guard. We got to watch out for the sin. 5 years later, when Cestus Gallus came, they said, oh, that's what the master was talking about. They said, how can we get out of here? They surround the city. Well, when they left, they said, now we have to take our flight. All of the true Christians, they fled to the mountains of Perea. They took their flight to safety. They were in the mountains of Perea for 4 years. 4 years later, 70 CE, from 60 to 70 CE, 4 years. 4 years later, a man named Titus came and he wrecked Jerusalem to the ground. Some 1,100,000 Jews were slaughtered. Another 97,000, they were taken captive, but not the Christians. They were in the mountains of Perea in safety. And they would say, we were glad we were alert. We were glad we demonstrated faith and confidence in what the Master said. Well, for you and I today, we don't have to run to a geographical location. We don't have to run to the mountains of Perea. Today, our flight is not dealing with geography. Today, we're supposed to be preparing our hearts and our minds right now to take our flight. We should be preparing our families. There's no wonder the slave says, no, we need to make sure people study. They say it's our responsibility. We need to make sure they study. There are other reasons they made the adjustment, but one is, no, we need family time. We need family worship. They need to prepare themselves for this flight, and we take responsibility for that. What a slave we have. How faithful. How loving. But are we alert? Are we aware of the times in which we live in? The fact that Jesus told them, don't go back in the house, just run straight to the mountains, that meant that Our flight may involve hardships, deprivations. We're going to have to do without some things. We have to recognize that now is not the time, as much as we hear it, as much as it almost sounds like a cliche, now is not the time to be trying to acquire all the material things that we can. That's why he said, just jump down and run. Do you believe all of this, though? Is there something you don't believe? Are you in a shackled environment? Clogged, prone to hamper? Are you in a stifling environment? Or are you on the move? Are you moving with Jehovah and his organization? Are you constantly moving with Jesus Christ and his leadership? Are we preparing our hearts and our minds right now? Well, 4 years, that's a long time to be in the mountains, wouldn't you say? You left in 66. Titus didn't come until 70. 4 years, that's a long time to be in the mountains. In fact, you could be in the mountains. You can look down in Jerusalem and see someone running with your TV. I said, I mean, they got a flat screen. That's a long time to be in the mountains. You look down from the mountain, they're drag racing in your car. You said, why did we run up here? Why did we let that go? Now, you know the young ones. And you know the young ones, they're ready to run back to Jerusalem to the gathering and make it back to the mountains before dark. Oh, they can do it. Oh, they can do it. Some of them, they're working it out now. Well, and many of us, we say, well, all this preparation, this stuff, this system has been going a long time. That's true. See, it's a long time. But are you preparing yourself for your flight of safety? Or are you looking down now and saying, well, no, I can get this, and I can do that, and I can dance with him, and we're going to be there? Or do you believe what God has said? Paul woke the Christians up. He roused them to action and right works. He moved them to beware of the sin. Well, for you and I today, how do we even know whether or not we are alert spiritually? Now that we see the purpose of the letter, and we've had the letter in our midst, how do we know whether or not we are alert spiritually? Do you remember part of the definition of a lack of faith? It was a lack of trust in God. It was a want of confidence. And remember, in the original Greek, it was of unbelief. We said we talk about that just a little bit. Of unbelief. The Greek language is so straightforward, it's so simple, it's hard to understand why people get it mixed up what the original Greek said. The Greek is Greek, and it means just what it says. So whereas in English we may say, well, lack of faith, try to get it eloquent and something, the Greeks would just say, of unbelief. Now what that means is, it's unbelief in practice. You're practicing your unbelief. You're demonstrating your unbelief. Well, what do we mean? How do we know whether a person is of unbelief? They stop performing. You see, if you believed all of this, then you would perform in such a way that you believed it. That's of unbelief. And there's a more subtle way that this lack of faith is manifest. And one of the members of the governing body helped us to appreciate that there are 5 parallels between physical sleep and spiritual sleep. See, the more subtle way of demonstrating a lack of faith or of unbelief, we just stay asleep. We don't wake up. We don't remain alert. And how do we know whether or not a person is asleep? That is, physically. You see, let's go over the parallels. How would we know that a person is actually asleep physically? Well, number one, the first parallel, they're usually in a state of inactivity. And usually that's how we can pretty much tell a person is asleep. They're in a state of inactivity. Now there's a rare disease, it's called sleepwalking, but that's very rare. A person walking across the highway or a main street and they're sound asleep. So usually we know a person is asleep if they're inactive. They're no longer performing. Well, how would we know a person is asleep spiritually? They're no longer active in the preaching work. They don't really believe that this is a life-saving work. If they believed it, they would order their life in such a way, this is a life-saving work, this is what I need to do, then they would set themselves up to do it. Are you still active in the preaching work? Are you looking for ways to really, truly now, to put kingdom interests ahead of everything else in this time period? How many of us believe it? You know, there in 2001, that World Trade Center tragedy, that was a tragedy. Many of us right there in Brooklyn, we saw it. It was right before our eyes. Well, we have some heroes in that city. Firemen and policemen. They are heroes. A hero is just someone that does heroic deeds. And they did heroic deeds. They performed. Why did they run into those buildings? And many of them lost their lives. Why did they run into those buildings? Because they view their work as a life-saving work. That's why they ran in. Do we view the preaching work as a life-saving work? Is that the way we're viewing it? Are we really going, trying to help people to learn about God and His grand blessings that are so near at hand? Are you a preacher? Do you preach and teach like Jesus? Or are you asleep? So that's the first parallel, a state of inactivity. The second parallel, usually a person will experience a decrease of consciousness. You ever been at a meeting, you're almost falling asleep? Been at the district convention, that ever happened to you? You start seeing two brothers up there, flowers up there. Next thing you know, you think you're in a garden somewhere. And then you kind of, okay, you were trying to remain conscious. Well, usually a person, they will experience a decrease of consciousness. Now, when I first moved to New York over 20-something years ago, I saw something that it really rocked me. Now, I didn't let the other Bethelites know, but it really rocked me. We were walking through Manhattan, a group of us. I think we were going to see a movie or something. I saw a grown man go into the garbage can. He picked up an old piece of a sandwich. It was wet and dirty. He picked it up and started eating it. That's what I said. I said, I said, why would a man... I mean, he was consuming that sandwich like it was a Thanksgiving dinner or something. I said, what would possess a man to go in the garbage? It bothered me for a while. Well, finally, years later, I was probably just had a talk or something, and I was doing some research. And I came across the scripture, Matthew chapter 5 and verse 3. And when I did a little more research, that scripture says, happy are those that are conscious of their spiritual need. Well, the original Greek says, happy are those that are beggars of the spirit. And I got it. I went back to that homeless man. I went back to that beggar, that grown man. I said, why would he go in a garbage can and eat? He was conscious that if he didn't eat, he would die. If you know you're going to die, you're going to get a piece of sandwich or something. You're going to wipe the spit, the water. You're going to wipe it off. And so how do you know a person is conscious of their spiritual need today? You see, if a person is asleep, there's a decrease of consciousness. They're just kind of sitting down, kind of going to sleep. Things are looking a little hazy. Is that the way your study habits are? Or is it clear what you're studying? Or is it just kind of hazy? You're seeing two speakers and trees and things blowing. Is there a decrease of consciousness? Or are you conscious that if you don't eat spiritually, you will die? Are you regular at the meetings? See, a meeting missed is a blessing missed. All meeting missed is a blessing missed. And some are very casual about missing meetings nowadays. They're very casual. You ask them where the children are. They say, oh, well, they got, they had homework. Yeah, they give them a lot of homework nowadays. They're missing meetings for homework. You need to wake up. See, some are snoring. They're so asleep, they're snoring. They're leaving them home for homework. Others are very casual about missing meetings. It's, well, can't get them all. You think he's watching sports? Well, I can't win them all. Brother, we're not watching sports. You better get them all. A meeting missed is a blessing missed. There's things said and done in meetings never be said that way again. We're working with Holy Spirit, working with God. But some are casual about their meeting attendance, their Bible study. Some really don't read the Bible. Remember that wicked heart that develops? How often have we been hearing to read the Bible? Do we think we're an exception? Just say, well, when I have a talk, I'll read it, but other than that, are we Bible readers? Do we study with our family? For decades, the slave has been telling us to have a regular family study. For decades. How many family heads are making sure that they're having a regular study with their family? Or are we asleep? Or are we conscious of our spiritual need? Let's look at the third parallel. Now, number 3 is, I remember this one fondly. Usually there's a decrease of responsiveness. Now, ain't that true? That's how we know a person is really asleep. Now, I learned this the hard way. There's 4 boys in our family. 4 boys. And for a large time of our young childhood, we had wooden floors. You know what 4 boys would do on wooden floors with white socks? Oh, we could have the Olympics there in that room. We would run and see who could slide the furthest, just kind of slide all across the room. Well, my mother and father, they always told us, don't be in this front room sliding. Well, my mother, she would take a nap about the same time every day. And when we knew she was in there, laying down on the sofa, just kind of taking a nap, we'd wreak havoc in that house. But before we could actually get started, we had to make sure that she was asleep. So sometimes what we would do, we'd take a piece of tape or a ball or something, we just kind of roll it in there. And my mother said, y'all better stop that. Then we go, okay, she's not asleep. But sometimes we kind of roll the tape in there and she wouldn't respond. By now we've tightened up our socks now. About time to get going. But we would have to make sure she was asleep. So sometimes we said, Mother. Sometimes she said, don't have me coming at you. And we said, okay, she's not sleeping. But after we would roll the tape, we'd call her a couple times. She was no longer responding. See, there was a decrease of responsiveness. And then we knew. We said, oh, she's asleep. The only problem is I was the youngest boy, so my brothers, they would send me first. I didn't know any better. I thought that they just wanted to see if the young brother could outslide them. I didn't know. I'd go running in there, slide my mother, run off and hit me inside the head with a plastic bat she bought us for Christmas. And then that's how we realized, no, she wasn't really sleeping. But for the most part, we learned that when she didn't respond, she was asleep. How can we tell whether a person is spiritually asleep today? They don't respond. They're not responding to encouragement and counsel. They don't respond to what they hear in God's Word, the Bible, what they read. They're just not responding. Even when they do study, they don't respond. The brothers come over and talk with them, they don't respond. Learn to respond to counsel. Learn to respond to the brothers. You see, the brothers are trying to save your life. Now, horror of horrors, about 15 years ago, the world said something, and some of us believed it. It's a shame. About 15 years ago, the world said something, and some of God's people believed it. Anybody remember when they said it had to be said politically correct? You know, some of God's people started believing that. It got to the point that you couldn't counsel anybody. You didn't know what to say. You had to say it so perfect, so politically correct. The slave is not mealy mouthed with us at Bethel. They're saying, thus says the Lord, and we do it. Who has all the time and the energy to try to say it so politically correct? They're trying to save your life. So it got so hard, brothers just stopped counseling people. I mean, who's going to now, what we want you to understand, and hitherto and herefore, that we want you to figure out, let me go get the dictionary because there's a word that you probably need. Well, who's going to do all this? They just stopped counseling. They just stopped counseling. But you know, if your kids are bad, they're bad. Somebody needs to tell you. No, the boy got all the kids outside tied up throwing rocks at him now. So he's bad. But you don't want the brothers to counsel you. You don't want them to talk to you. It's going to cost you your life. You know, if your skirts and dresses are a little too high, a little too twisty, somebody needs to tell you. We live in the bosom age today. Everybody walking around think they got to show their bosom. You better get somebody to sit down. No, the brothers are trying to tell you, you better be careful. You have to be on guard. You want to watch out. You know, I went on a shepherding call with an older brother, and thank God I was with an older brother. The subject was wardrobe, clothing. And I had all these scriptures, and I'm reading all these scriptures. I don't know what y'all talking about. I make my own clothes. The older brother said, "Sis, that's what we're talking about. You got to start with enough material." I really want to look at him and say, "Yeah," but I knew we were on a ship right now. I knew we were on a ship. I was just like, "Good point, brother." Now, brothers and sisters, we will laugh at this, but you know, it's a tragedy, and the slave is a little alarmed. The slave is a little alarmed. You know we're in the last days. We have to send pictures and put circles around and tell you how to come about. You got to wake up, friends. You got to wake up. You got to be on guard. You're twin Bethel like that, the house of God? Some are asleep. They're snoring. They don't get it. They're being influenced by the world. And Jehovah loving me with the faithful slave. They talk to us. They're sending us pictures now. Got the circles in red. That's right, I have to start sending out clothing overseers. We have traveling overseers, we're going to have clothing overseers. Trying to show, is it that bad? We need to wake up. See, there's a decrease of responsiveness. One of the members of the governing body, Brother Mark Putzinger, he survived the concentration camps in there in Nazi Germany. He and his wife. He was in a camp for about 7 to 8 years. Well, he gave a talk at Bethel one night, and it was about bearing up under persecution. We know he lived it. And after the talk, he told a group of friends, he was explaining some things that he couldn't say from the platform, things they endured. And one was that all of the witnesses, they wore the purple triangle, the brothers. We all know that. And what the SS guards would do, they would get all the witnesses sometime, and they make them stand outside in the cold weather. Sometimes 20, 30 degrees below zero. They make them stand outside. Just make them stand outside in a group. And if that weren't bad enough, they pour water in. But Brother Putzinger said nobody died. He said we all made it. He said now what we would do, we would get in a huddle. And we'd keep eye contact with each other. Now the way the body is made and designed, Jehovah designed us so that when the body gets cold and the blood needs to start flowing and so that we can kind of move, the body gets chill bumps. Did that ever happen to you? And the chill bumps, that's when you start shivering like that because you're cold and the body has a natural reaction. It's kind of like, get some blood flowing. We're about to freeze to death. So you get the chill bumps. But what happens over a period of time, the pain will lose. You'll feel a mild sleepiness, and then you can freeze to death. So Brother Putzinger said what they would do, they're out in cold weather, they poured water on them, and they'd all get in a huddle, and they keep moving, and they establish eye contact with one another, and they just keep looking at each other. And after a while, if they saw a brother kind of getting comfortable, just kind of looks like he's going to sleep, Brother Putzinger said they'd haul off and they'd slap him. And the brother would wake up and say, thank you for that, and he just kind of stiff. Oh no, he saved the brother's life. And the brother recognized, oh, you slapped me, you saved my life, you woke me up. He responded. Now some of us, we don't want the brothers to slap us. They're trying to save our life, and we don't want them to counsel us. We don't want the brother to slap us. Now, wouldn't it be a shame if the brother slapped him and he said, well, you just did that because I ate first in line ahead of you the other day? Wouldn't that be a shame? You can tell he missed something. The brother was trying to wake up, you were going to go to sleep. You could have froze to death. No, he would wake up and say, thank you, brother, and he would keep going. Well, allow the brothers to slap you. Respond to counsel. Seek out discipline. Hold on to it, the Bible says. Don't let it go. And it'll save your life. Don't develop a decrease of responsiveness. Let Jehovah mold you. Let him train you. He wants us to live forever. Well, at fourth parallel, there's usually a drop in body temperature and heart rate. That's simple. That's why when we wake up, we're cold sometimes. Does it ever happen to you? You wake up and I'm cold. Well, Jehovah's not a wasteful God. He knows when we're asleep, we're in a state of inactivity, we don't need all that energy. So it's a drop in body temperature, drop in heart rate. Now when you wake up, the heart rate picks up the body temperature. Well, how do we know someone is asleep spiritually? They don't have any zeal. There's no fire for the truth. Remember how we were when we first learned the truth. But where's that zeal for the ministry, God's work, kingdom work and efforts? Have we lost that zeal? It's like the shepherd boy said of the Shulamite maiden. He said, she makes my heart beat. Is that what the truth does for us? David said, come all you who fear God, and I'll tell you what the truth has done for my soul. He said, I'll tell you what the truth has done for me. Can people see us in our lives? Can they see the truth has done something for you? There's no wonder some of us, our families, don't come to the truth. They look at us and say, well, truth hasn't done anything for you. Why should I be doing all that? Where's our zeal? David said, come all you who fear God, and I'll tell you what the truth has done for me. Do we have that same zeal for the truth today? Are we asleep? Are we zealous in our service and our work for God and for things that will advance kingdom interests? The fifth and the final parallel, a characteristic of a person that is asleep, they usually dream. Now, usually when we dream, it's not when we're in a deep sleep. It's in what they call that REM sleep. We're just about to wake up. They call it the rapid eye movement sleep. We're just about to wake up, and we can have some of the deepest dreams. You ever had a dream deep and so real? You wake up in a sweat. Sometimes we wake up and like, well, I'm glad that was a dream. Well, when people are asleep, they dream. And spiritually speaking, many are dreaming today. They live in a fantasy world. And the dream seems so real. I remember one night I had a dream. I'll never forget this. My wife won't let me forget it either. I woke my wife about 3 in the morning. I said, Donna, I just had a dream. We won $7 million. It was so real. I had won $7 million. She said, go back to sleep and don't wake me up until you have the money. He said, don't wake me up again now. Do you have the money? I woke up later on. It was about 8 o'clock in the morning. I said, Donna, did I wake you up? She said, yes, you did. I said, well, what did I say? She said, you claimed you had won some money. I said, well, what did you say? I said, you better go back to sleep until you have some money. But it was so real. I was so let down. I was ready to go and buy some things. But our dreams can be so real. But what happens to these dreams? What happened to the American dream? Remember years ago, the American dream was to get a home. Now the American dream is in foreclosure. A couple years ago, the American dream, get a home, get a timeshare, get a boat. Don't have you going. Many people are seeking worldly fantasies. They're not pursuing kingdom realities. The reality is the kingdom. And Satan, the devil, has designed this system that we'll go out and pursue worldly fantasies. We won't pursue kingdom realities. Satan, the devil, he lived in a fantasy. He thought he was going to be like God. Where did it get him? The angels in heaven with God. They were that close. They lived in a fantasy. They noticed the women on the earth and they said, we're going to live in a dream. Adam and Eve, right there with God in the Garden of Eden, they lived in a fantasy. They believed that they could be like God. Brothers and sisters, don't dream. Pursue kingdom realities and reject these worldly fantasies. Stay alert. Stand firm, the Bible says. Satan has designed a system to weigh us down, to wear us down, to put as much pressure on us as he can. He's bringing every charge against us. He's trying to make them all stick. People are running to sin like iron filings to a magnet. The only way we're going to make it is going to take unshakable faith. We must trust God. We must believe God. We must have confidence in Jehovah. And above all things, in this time of the end, be careful. You better watch out. You better be on guard. And beware of the sin.